When World War I erupted in 1914, most people think of the muddy trenches of the Western Front. But the conflict was truly global, reaching even the arid landscapes of what is now Namibia. This was the scene of the Southwest Africa Campaign, a swift and decisive, yet often overlooked, chapter of the Great War. It pitted the newly formed Union of South Africa, fighting for the British Empire against the German colonial forces defending their prized territory of German Southwest Africa. So, let's set the stage. By 1914, Germany had controlled this vast, sparsely populated region for about 30 years. It was their only colony in southern Africa, and they had invested heavily in it, building railways, ports, and powerful wireless radio stations. These weren't just for colonial administration, they were strategic assets. The radio towers at Windhoek and Lüderitz could communicate directly with Berlin and with German naval ships in the Atlantic, posing a serious threat to Allied shipping routes around the Cape of Good Hope. Britain couldn't ignore this. Just days after declaring war on Germany, London formally requested that the Union of South Africa seize the German colony. For South Africa, this was a complicated request. The country had only been unified 4 years earlier, after the bitter Anglo-Boer Wars. Many Afrikaners who were of Dutch descent still harbored deep resentment towards the British. They saw Germany as a former ally against British imperialism. The Prime Minister, Louis Botha, and his deputy, Jan Smuts, were former Boer generals who had fought against the British. Now, they were leading a dominion of the British Empire and being asked to invade a German territory. This decision was deeply divisive and would have serious consequences back home. Despite the political turmoil, Botha agreed to Britain's request. He believed it was South Africa's duty as part of the empire, and he saw it as an opportunity for the young nation to expand its influence. But before they could even invade, they had to deal with a rebellion at home. The Maritz Rebellion, or Boer Revolt, broke out in September 1914, led by disaffected Afrikaner officers who sympathized with Germany. Thousands took up arms against their own government. Botha had to put down this internal uprising first, which he did with surprising speed and relative leniency. By early 1915, the rebellion was over, and South Africa could finally turn its full attention to the German colony next door. The German forces in Southwest Africa were small but well-equipped and highly motivated. They were commanded by Colonel Joachim von Heydrich, and later by Lieutenant Colonel Victor Frank. They had around 2,000 regular troops, known as Schutztrupp, and could call upon about 3,000 reservists. They knew the harsh terrain intimately, and planned to use the vast waterless Namib Desert as their greatest defensive weapon. Their strategy was to draw the South African forces deep into the interior, stretching their supply lines to the breaking point, and then pick them off. The South African plan, devised by Jan Smuts, was a classic pincer movement, designed to avoid this very trap. The invasion would be a two-pronged assault. A southern force, under Smuts's direct command, would land at the port of Lüderitz and advance eastward along the railway line. Meanwhile, a northern force, commanded by Prime Minister Botha himself, would land at Walvis Bay, a small British enclave on the coast, and push inland towards the capital Windhoek. The goal was to surround and crush the German forces between these two advancing armies. The campaign began in earnest in early 1915. The southern force faced incredible hardship. Marching through the desert, they struggled with extreme heat, sandstorms, and a critical lack of water. The Germans had poisoned many of the wells as they retreated, forcing the South Africans to rely on a massive logistical effort to pump water all the way from the coast. Despite these challenges, they steadily advanced, capturing key railway junctions and forcing the Germans back. Meanwhile, Botha's northern force was making spectacular progress. Landing at Walvis Bay in February, they quickly secured the port and began their push inland. Botha, leading from the front on horseback, proved to be a brilliant commander. He used his army's superior numbers, nearly 50,000 men in total, and their greater mobility thanks to a mix of infantry, mounted brigades, and newly introduced armored cars to outmaneuver the Germans at every turn. Instead of a slow, grinding advance, Botha executed a series of rapid flanking movements, often covering vast distances in a short time. A key moment came at the Battle of Gibeon in April 1915. The southern force finally caught up with a significant German contingent. After a sharp engagement, the Germans were forced to retreat north, right into the path of Botha's advancing army. The pincer was closing. Realizing the strategic situation was hopeless, the Germans evacuated the capital, Windhoek. On May 12, 1915, Louis Botha rode into the city and accepted its surrender without a fight. The powerful radio station, a primary objective of the entire campaign, was captured intact. But it wasn't over yet. The remaining German forces, under Colonel Frank, retreated further north, into the rugged, difficult terrain near the town of Otavi. Botha gave them no time to rest. He pursued them relentlessly. In what became a legendary feat of logistics and endurance, his troops covered hundreds of kilometers in just a few weeks. The final confrontation came at Korab, near Otavi, surrounded, outnumbered. And with no hope of escape or reinforcement, Colonel Frank knew the fight was over. On July 9, 1915, he formally surrendered his remaining forces to Louis Botha. The Southwest Africa campaign was over in less than a year. It was a remarkable success for the Union of South Africa. They had conquered a territory larger than France, with relatively few casualties around. 266 killed on the Allied side, and 133 on the German side. It was one of the first major Allied victories of World War I. The outcome was significant. German Southwest Africa was placed under South African military occupation. For the remainder of the war, after the war, the new League of Nations granted South Africa a mandate to govern the territory, which it did until Namibia finally gained its independence in 1990. The campaign solidified the strategic partnership between South Africa and Britain, and it established the military reputation of leaders like Botha and Smuts on the world stage. It was a swift, decisive campaign, fought in a harsh and unforgiving land, a testament to mobility, strategy, and endurance, and a crucial, if often forgotten, part of the First World War. Thanks for watching. If you found this piece of history interesting, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the forgotten corners of the past. See you next time.